What if parking on a public street got you a $300 fine, police sirens at your door, and a courtroom battle you couldn't win? In New Jersey, Tom Rivera just wanted to fix his car, but the HOA had other plans, turning a quiet afternoon into a fight for justice. Stay tuned for a story of rebellion, community support, and a system that refuses to bend. In the orderly suburb of Pineview Estates, New Jersey, where every house mirrored the next with neatly trimmed hedges and spotless driveways, 42-year-old Tom Rivera lived a life of hard work and quiet determination. A mechanic at a local auto shop, Tom had bought his $250,000 home in 2022, a fixer-upper he shared with his wife Maria and their two teenage daughters. On weekends, Tom often tinkered with cars in his garage, a passion that kept him grounded after long days at work. On the sunny afternoon of May 3, 2025, Tom was working on a 2015 Ford pickup he'd borrowed from a friend, its engine rumbling softly as he adjusted the carburetor. His own car, a beat-up 2008 Honda Civic, was parked on the curb of the public street outside his house, a street maintained by the city, not the HOA. With the garage door open, the sound of his tools clanking against metal filled the air, a familiar rhythm in the otherwise quiet cul-de-sac. Pineview Estates was governed by a strict homeowners association led by 64-year-old President Evelyn Sanders, a retired accountant who ruled with an iron fist. Evelyn prided herself on maintaining the neighborhood's pristine image. No overgrown lawns, no unsightly clutter, and certainly no cars parked on the street, even if it was public property. She'd long pushed for a bylaw that stated vehicles must not obstruct community aesthetics, with a $300 fine per violation, a rule she interpreted broadly to include public streets, despite lacking legal authority. That afternoon, as Evelyn drove her golf cart through the neighborhood on her daily patrol, she spotted Tom's Civic on the curb, its faded blue paint and slightly dented bumper an affront to her vision of perfection. She clenched her jaw, her fingers tightening on the steering wheel, and decided to take action, muttering to herself, "That car has to go." At 3:30 p.m., just as Tom tightened the last bolt on the pickup, the shrill wail of police sirens broke the afternoon calm. He wiped his hands on a rag, his brow furrowing as he stepped out of the garage, the sound of his boots scuffing against the concrete driveway. A police cruiser rolled into the cul-de-sac, its tires crunching on the asphalt, red and blue lights casting eerie shadows on the pavement. Officer Michael Torres, a 38-year-old cop with a reputation for fairness, stepped out, his radio crackling as he adjusted his cap. "Sir, we've had a complaint about your vehicle," he said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the hum of the neighborhood. Tom's eyes narrowed, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "A complaint? It's on a public street," he shouted, his voice rising with frustration, the words echoing off the nearby houses. Evelyn, who had followed in her golf cart, its motor humming softly, stepped forward with a triumphant smirk, clutching a fine notice in her hand. "Your car is an eyesore and violates HOA rules," she declared, her tone sharp and unyielding. "That's a $300 fine, payable now, or we'll escalate this." Tom's face flushed with anger, his voice booming as he pointed at the street. "This is public property. You have no jurisdiction here," he roared, his words overlapping with the rustle of the fine notice as Evelyn thrust it toward him. Officer Torres, however, took a step back, his radio crackling as he spoke into it, his voice low and measured. "Dispatch, confirm. This is a public street. No violation on our end," he said, the static-filled response confirming Tom's stance. But Evelyn was undeterred, her eyes narrowing as she tore the fine notice from her pad, the paper ripping with a sharp sound. "The HOA still has authority over aesthetics," she snapped, handing the fine to Tom, who crumpled it in his fist, his breathing heavy with rage. Despite the police siding with him, Tom knew the HOA wouldn't back down. Officer Torres tipped his cap, his boots thudding against the pavement as he returned to his cruiser, the engine rumbling as he drove away. Evelyn, however, lingered, her golf cart idling as she issued a warning. "Pay the fine or we'll see you in court," she hissed, her voice cold, before driving off, leaving Tom standing on his driveway, the crumpled fine notice in his hand. his heart pounding with a mix of anger and determination. He couldn't let this stand, not just for himself, but for every resident in Pineview Estates who'd ever felt the HOA's overreach. Word of the incident spread quickly through the neighborhood, whispered over backyard fences and shared during evening walks. The residents of Pineview Estates were fed up with Evelyn's draconian rules, and Tom's story became a rallying cry. The next morning, a group of neighbors, led by 35-year-old teacher Sarah Jenkins, organized a protest to support him. At 10 a.m., dozens of residents gathered on the public street outside Tom's house, riding their bicycles in a slow, deliberate parade. The sound of bike bells rang out in unison, a cheerful cacophony that filled the cul-de-sac, a symbol of defiance against the HOA's control. Children rode alongside their parents, their laughter mixing with the rhythmic pedaling, while onlookers clapped from their porches, their applause a steady drumbeat of solidarity. The protest caught the attention of the local paper, the Pineview Gazette, which ran a story titled "HOA Fines Man $300 for Parking on Public Street." Residents fight back, the reporter's voice amplifying the community's frustration through a radio broadcast. Bolstered by the support, Tom decided to take the HOA to court. He hired a lawyer, 45-year-old David Lopez, dipping into his savings to cover the legal fees, determined to prove the HOA had no authority over public streets. David, a seasoned attorney with a knack for property law, argued that the HOA's rule was unenforceable on city property, citing New Jersey statutes that protected public parking rights, his voice steady and confident in the courtroom. The trial drew a crowd of Pineview residents, their footsteps shuffling as they filled the benches, their murmurs a quiet buzz of anticipation. Tom took the stand, his voice firm as he recounted the day, his words carrying the weight of his frustration. "I parked on a public street to fix a friend's car," he said, his tone unwavering. "They can't control what isn't theirs." David presented city records and legal precedents, his arguments clear and compelling, the rustle of documents loud as he handed them to the judge. But Evelyn and the HOA board were unyielding. Evelyn claimed the car disrupted the community's aesthetic harmony, her voice nasal and sharp, her fingers tapping impatiently on the table. The HOA's lawyer argued that the bylaws extended to the street's visual impact, a weak claim that drew skeptical murmurs from the gallery. The judge, however, a 60-year-old known for upholding HOA contracts, sided with the HOA, his gavel slamming down with a resounding thud that silenced the room. "The bylaws prioritize community standards," he declared, his voice booming, the echo lingering. Tom was ordered to pay the $300 fine, plus $2,500 in HOA legal fees. The verdict a crushing blow that left him staring at the floor, his fists clenched in defeat. The aftermath was bleak. The HOA, emboldened by the ruling, banned all street parking in the neighborhood, even on public property, announcing the new rule at the next meeting, Evelyn's voice echoing through the community center's speakers with a new fine of $400 for violations. Tom, financially strained, had to cut back on family expenses, the sound of his daughter's disappointed sighs a constant reminder of the cost. Pineview Estates, once a place of neighborly camaraderie, became a battleground, with residents fearing the HOA's unchecked power. Tom parked his car in the garage from then on, the creak of the garage door a daily reminder of his lost fight, his passion for fixing cars now tainted by the memory of that sunny afternoon. And so, a simple act of parking on a public street became a battle for justice in Pineview Estates, New Jersey. Was Tom wrong to park where he had every legal right? Or did the HOA and the courts go too far with their rules? What do you think? Should a neighborhood association control public spaces? Share your thoughts and join us next time for another tale of HOA madness. Until then, keep fighting for what's right. Thank you for listening.